You in Gemara, but today we'll deviate slightly to an Ashkenaz accent. This is only testing. However, one thing we guarantee, the Gemara is the same as before. Same words as they are found in the Sefer. The Gemara says that a person who studies Torah can be assured of long life, the blessings of Hashem. And yet, the Gemara says too, it is understood that the greatest desire a man can have in life, the greatest desire, more than anything else for himself, is the welfare and benefit of his children. If a person was given a choice to select a bracha, a blessing of any kind, and he'd have a wish that can be fulfilled, he would say, Hashem, give me nachas for my children. Let me have pleasure in seeing my children live happily and live, most important, religiously, in the spirit of Torah. So the Gemara says, person who is himself a Talmud Chacham, that means he is learned in Torah, and his son is a Talmud Chacham. And why is his son a Talmud Chacham? Because he dedicated himself to the chinuch, bringing up his son properly, sending him to yeshiva. And then, in addition, his grandson too is a Talmud Chacham. Not because his son occupied himself with giving his son an upbringing, but because the grandfather is the one who raised his grandson, his grandchild, close to himself, saw to it that he studied Torah, learned with him, brought him up properly in the path of Torah. The Gemara says there is a very beneficial reward for this person. The reward is he could then know that the lineage, this pure chain, this holy golden chain of Torah, will never stop. He can rest assured, passing away, that his descendants will all be B'nai Torah. They will all study Torah because the nature of Torah is that it comes back to its place of rest. If Torah has found an inn where it's accepted, where there is hospitality for it, the Torah seeks this inn continually. So the Torah will come back to this family, the grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and so on. The question, of course, is the fact, Pirkei Avos, the Mishnah says that a person should struggle to learn Torah himself. Don't think that if your father was learned in Torah, that means automatically you'll be a Talmud Chacham. Because one thing about Torah is that you cannot inherit it. There is a crown of royalty, a king. That crown can be handed down from father to son. A prince inherits the crown. He is born into a royal family. He doesn't have to work to earn this. A Kohen Gadol. Kohen Gadol is one who inherits this crown of Kahuna from his father too. That's the crown of Kahuna. But the crown of Torah is one that cannot be inherited. Every individual must struggle, work, study hard in order to deserve this crown. So according to that Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, it means that a person cannot inherit Torah. What good is it if a person is a Talmud Chacham, his son, his grandson, a Talmid Chacham? How can it be that his great-grandson will automatically inherit Torah, if Torah cannot be inherited? The answer is, both statements are true. A person cannot inherit Torah. But the difference is that where you do not have this trio, grandfather, father, and son, who are Talmidei Chachamim, then the next generation must struggle on its own to go out and seek this treasure called Torah. He has to learn very hard and make sacrifices in order to gain the knowledge of Torah. But if a person does have these three generations already equal for, then the Torah will come to seek out this person. It will offer itself. If that person, in being offered the opportunity to study Torah, will reject it, chas v'sholom, he cannot inherit this knowledge. He'll have it much easier to be able to learn to have the opportunity of studying, but he cannot sit back, refuse to learn, and have the Torah penetrate into his mind. Torah must be studied, must be learned, must be worked on. It's just that if you have these 3 generations, then it is simpler for the next generation to learn. This is why, too, we learned the Gemara in Kedushin said that a person who teaches Torah to his son and to his grandson, then it is as though he received the Torah from Mount Sinai itself. And that's because at Har Sinai, every single neshama, every soul of all Jews, including ours, were present. So a person who was there, all his future descendants were there too. A person who teaches Torah to his grandson in addition to his son, it is as though he stood at Har Sinai, because then he knows that future generations will be B'nai Torah, will have a pure lineage of B'nai Torah in his family. The Gemara says Rabbi Zera was one of the great rabbis of Bava, and he decided upon Aliyah, to go up to Eretz Yisrael, a decision that every Jew should make in every generation, a decision that should be ours, one we should strive for with all our power. It is a duty of every Jew to go to Eretz Yisrael, to visit there, at least to walk the 4 steps, in which he'll gain a tikkun for his neshama. In addition, he'll gain the open mind for knowledge of Torah, the wisdom that comes in Eretz Yisrael only. As the Gemara says that the Avir of Eretz Yisrael is machkim, the air of Eretz Yisrael is conducive to wisdom. In addition, a person should strive to live there. The mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael is one that is so great and so beneficial for a person's neshama and well-being, that living and dying in Eretz Yisrael are incomparable assets to the person's neshama. Living there alone means that he spends his entire time in Kedusha, in the presence of the holiness of Eretz Yisrael, where the Shekhinah, Spirit of Hashem, is always there, in much greater measure than outside of Eretz Yisrael, because though we know that the Shekhinah, Spirit of Hashem, has gone into Golus together with the Jews, still the greater portion of Kedusha of the Shekhinah still rests in Eretz Yisrael. The pasuk says, Tamid Einei Hashem Lekach Haba, eternally are the eyes of Hashem, the Hashgacha, supervising everything that occurs in Eretz Yisrael, whereas in other lands there is only the angel sent by Hashem to guard the Jews there. There you have Hashem himself, Kaviyachal. In addition to a person who is zocheh to surrender his neshama, to pass away, to give back, return his neshama, while in the arms of his mother, which means in Eretz Yisrael, that person's neshama remains pure. There is no effect upon that neshama by the angel of death, because the Malach HaMavis has the power over souls only outside of Eretz Yisrael. So great is the privilege of passing away in Eretz Yisrael and being buried there. Pasuk says, "V'chi perad masa amo," that the earth itself in Eretz Yisrael forgives the sins of the Jews. So dying and being buried there is a privilege that is. So this is an item that should be discussed continually, and it should be in the mind of every Jew at all times until he is finally zochet to get to Eretz Yisrael. And certainly he'd be better off if he got there, even if Mashiach came. He'd be much better off getting to Eretz Yisrael before Mashiach came than afterwards. To be able to greet Mashiach in Eretz Yisrael, not to have to use his mitzvahs to pay for the trip to Eretz Yisrael and having Mashiach lead him there. Mashiach would find the day and be very proud that he preceded the coming of Mashiach to Eretz Yisrael. Now the Gemara says, Rabbi Zera went up to Eretz Yisrael, moving from Bava. Before he went to Eretz Yisrael, he fasted 100 days successively. 100 successive days of fasting. Of course, that means by day, not at night. Or it means 100 days of weeks, where he ate only on Shabbos. The reason he fasted was that fasting means something for a spiritual gain. The gain here was, amazingly, he fasted he should forget the Torah that he had learned in Bava. Not to gain knowledge, but to lose knowledge. To forget all that he had learned in Bava. Of course, it does not mean the basic knowledge of Torah. It means the additional knowledge that was gained in Bava, or the type of study of Torah that was, at that time, customary in Bava, compared to the type in Eretz Yisrael. What was the difference? The difference is that in Bavel there was a lot of machlokas, a lot of debates among the rabbis, and a lot of depth. People studied Torah in depth, but the depth is the kind that we call pilpul today. Pilpul means a discourse, a deep discourse in Talmud. Now, pilpul is very nice, because the Gemara says that Hashem enjoys pilpul more than anything else in Torah. But there is a type of pilpul that is called pilpul shel hevel. That means a pilpul based on air, worth nothing. There are certain types of people today who write Sfarim, Chidushei Torah. They delve deeply into Gemara, they ask questions, they go into a discussion of questions and answers, and they write this pilpul, which is all for the sake of trying to show, to boast, show off his knowledge. But a pilpul that is very hair-splitting, very thin, ragged edges, a question that is not really a solid question. The question comes up, the kasha comes up only because there is no havona, a clear understanding of the Gemara itself. And the answer too, again, that splits hairs. So that the entire pilpul is as though it's based on air itself. There's no real, true depth, understanding in the Gemara, the Talmud itself. And that was the kind of study that prevailed in Bava. In Eretz Yisrael, the minds were much more settled and clear, and the manner in which Torah was learned was much more pure, so that there were less debates, less machlokas in Eretz Yisrael. For that reason, Rabbi Zera fasted 100 days in order to forget the manner of Torah he studied in Bava. But that wasn't all. He then fasted a second series of 100 days, praying that Rabbi Elazar, who was the chief rabbi of Eretz Yisrael, should not pass away during the time Rabbi Zera was in Eretz Yisrael. Because if he'd pass away, he knew they would automatically select Rabbi Zera himself to become chief rabbi, and a chief rabbi cannot really sit and study Torah with peace of mind. He has too many problems of the people, the problems of the community, items that continually come to him for advice, for assistance, and he doesn't have the chance, the opportunity to sit and study Torah in peace. Therefore he prayed, let this burden rest upon Rabbi Elazar, who already has it. Let him live long so that Rabbi Zera could really sit and study Torah. This, of course, too, is a lesson. A person should not seek a high office, even in the rabbinate, if he wants to be studious in the study of Torah. Third item Rabbi Zera fasted for, another 100 days. He fasted that the fires of Gehenna should have no effect upon him. He should be saved from having to suffer the torture of the fires of Gehenna. Now, he finished these 3 series of fasts. He could detect the fact that he was successful in the first fast. He felt that his knowledge was improving in Eretz Yisrael in the proper vein. He could see Rabbi Elazar was alive. And how could he tell whether his third fast had proven effective, whether it bore fruit, whether he was immune to the fires of Gehenna? Rabbi Zera decided, since the Gemara says that the fires of Gehenna are similar to the fires on earth, except that they are much more intense, 60 times the intensity of the fires on earth, he would test it. Every 30 days, as the Gemara says, the fires of Gehenna are relit. Every 30 days, they are fired up anew. So every 30 days, Rabbi Zera would ignite the oven in his home. And this he'd bring up to the highest pitch of heat. he would go inside the oven and sit there for a while and test himself and see that the fires had no effect upon him whatsoever. This went on for quite a while, until, of course, this was done in secret, until the other rabbis became aware of this, and they were amazed. They looked at him with awe, admiration, curiosity, and this leads to what is known as ayin hara. An ayin hara because of envy, too. Deeply, subconsciously, there is envy, which means ayin hara. Following this, he went into the oven, and he found that this time his legs were singed, burnt slightly. And for that, Zera was very short of stature. From that time on, the rabbis called him Katina Charich Sake, which means the small one with burnt legs. This, of course, still was a compliment. The fact that he was immune to the fires of Gehenna. But note that even one whom Gehenna cannot touch is still prone to the evil of ayin hara. A person should be careful to avoid an ayin hara, which means don't show off any talents that you have too openly. Don't bring on upon yourself the envy of others, because you never know which person has that power of ayin hara who can actually hurt you. The only people who are really immune to ayin hara, as the Gemara says, are those who are descendants of Yosef HaTzadik, or those who have, as the oldest child of the family, a girl, those who have an older sister, the brothers are immune to ayin hara. Otherwise, all others should be extremely careful to avoid this. The Gemara says there is a posek by Yirmiyahu, the prophet, who asks a question. Strange type of question, or the wording is sort of strange. His question is, who is wise? Which person is wise enough to understand this, to whom Hashem spoke? Let him say. The question by Hashem is, why was this land lost? Eretz Yisrael. What's the reason that the land was lost? And the Gemara says, this question was discussed by the Chachamim, the wise rabbis, and they could not explain it. The prophets, the Nevi'im, also discussed this. They too cannot explain it. They could not give the answer to this question until Hashem himself explained it and gave the answer. Hashem said, the reason the land was lost is because the Jews have left the Torah. What is meant by left the Torah? The Gemara says because they did not say a bracha on the Torah. They studied the Torah. They did not say a bracha before the learning Torah. You have to say a bracha, Hashem bracha banu v'kolanim. But this bracha they did not say. This is the reason the land was lost. Now, what does that actually mean? Because a bracha is not said, this is enough of a reason, enough of a sin, an evil to have the Jews sent into exile, plus the fact that it seems they did study Torah. So what was actually a sin? The answer is that if the sentence would mean that the Jews left the Torah completely, there'd be no reason why the rabbis and the prophets couldn't answer the question of Hashem. Very simply. The Jewish lives, the Jewish nation, the Jewish future is based on Torah. In fact, the whole creation exists only because of Torah. If the Jews would have actually left the Torah, then the answer would have been very simple. The point was that the rabbis felt the Jews did continue to study Torah. Now, why then was the land lost? Until Hashem explained, because they did not say a bracha on the Torah. That saying a bracha means, why does a person say a bracha? Either because he's going to have pleasure in eating food, or because he's about to perform a mitzvah. Before you listen to the blowing of the shofar, before you have the Megillah read, before you light the Hanukkah candles, before you light the candles of Shabbos, there is a bracha said, because This is the performance of a mitzvah. Now, in this case, Hashem said the Jews did study Torah, but they did not consider the study of Torah as a mitzvah. They considered it a matter of education, learning a topic, even learning what to do, how to conduct themselves, what the mitzvahs of Hashem were. But they did not evaluate, praise the Torah in its correct light. That more important than the mitzvahs that are mentioned in the Torah itself is the mitzvah of the study of Torah. Because they belittled the mitzvah of studying the Torah, therefore they deserve to lose Eretz Yisrael. And this saying of the bracha too, the bracha before the study of Torah, is such that if a person does a mitzvah with kavanah, with full intent, with seriousness, putting his heart into it, then when he says the bracha, he has kavanah too for the bracha. For example, the mitzvah of slaughtering. When a shochet slaughters an animal, he is supposed to say the bracha with kavanah. Arizal says that a person who slaughters an animal, or even a chicken, and does not say the bracha with kavanah, then his shchita, as kosher as it is, still constitutes murder to a certain degree. So important is the bracha that is said before a mitzvah. This, again, is an item we should take to heart, knowing that when we speak about davening, praying with kavanah, with heart, remember always that one of the most important parts of tefillah is the bracha that is said before a mitzvah. When saying a bracha, you have to think of the fact that a bracha is not a legal one unless there is shem or malchus, the name of Hashem and the word melech, king. And this requires kavanah, to think of the words you're saying, to stress them, to bind your heart to your tongue, to bind your mind to your mouth. Say the words, think of the meaning, and say them with the proper respect before the King of the universe. You say, Baruch atah Hashem, blessed are you Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam. Those words that precede every single bracha should never be said while the mind is wandering off elsewhere. Those words, at least, a person should say with the utmost kavanah, and before he says them, think of why you're going to say them. If this is for bread, know that the bracha is for bread before you say the word Baruch. If it's for any other type of bracha, think of the translation of the words. This is the most important place in tefillah to have kavanah. The Gemara says now again that a Talmud Chacham, whose father is a Talmud Chacham, it means he is learned, his father is learned, there is a family tree of greatness, and the Torah that he studies is purer, clearer than that of a person who himself is wise and learned, but his father was an Am Ha'aretz. It's very admirable that he turned away from the path of his father, illiteracy, and went to study Torah. But invariably, you'll find that this type of person boasts about it, shows off with his knowledge. The Gemara compares this to a cup, a metal container that has one single coin in it. Now, if you shake that container, that coin will make a lot of noise. If the container is filled with coins, shake it, it will remain silent. That means if this is a family of Talmidei Chachamim, you will not hear any sounds coming from them boasting about it. The cup is filled with silver coins. It's rich, yet there are no sounds coming from it. But if the cup is empty, just one coin alone, there will be a lot of sounds coming from that. And of course, this mushal can be applied to a person who has learned little, who started from scratch, has learned a little, and thinks he has a lot of knowledge by this little. A person with very little in his cup is a Jewish word for head, has slight bit of knowledge, will make a lot of noise about this knowledge. A person who is very learned knows that his knowledge is nothing as yet, because the knowledge of Torah is infinite, so no person can ever really claim to have studied the entire Torah, or even any sizable portion of it. He says too in Iyov, there's a posek which says, Kotor v'godol shon hu. There meaning in Gan Eden, in paradise, you will find a small person and a large person, low and great. And Eved Chavshi mi'adonav, and a slave who is free of his master. The Gemara asks, what is meant by small and great person? Naturally, all who deserve are there, small or great. The Gemara answers there is a lesson that Iyov is teaching us. The lesson is that we say small and great. That means before a person reaches greatness, there must be first smallness. And this smallness means modesty, humbleness. A person who humbles himself for the sake of Torah, which means, most important, that he is willing to go to study Torah despite the derision, the mockery of his friends, who say to him, why waste time, using that term, chas v'shalom, about the study of Torah. Why waste time and go to a class, go to a shul to study Torah, when you can do things that are much more enjoyable? If this person accepts this mockery and still goes to study Torah, that means he humbles himself before them. That person is assured of greatness in the future world, in Gan Eden. The opposite, of course, is understood. Those who mock, who consider themselves haughty here, will find how small they are there. A person who makes himself into a slave of Torah in this world, he considers the fact that he must toil, accept this burden of Torah upon himself, serve Torah in this world. There, in Olam Haba, in Gan Eden, will find himself completely free. Free meaning he'll be a master there. He will be the Lord Master over all the angels that were created through his study of Torah. So that the real key to Gan Eden is always the study of Torah through humbleness on this world. Then he is assured of greatness, of honor, victory, eternally in Olam Haba, in Gan Eden. The Gemara says Rish Lakish, we discussed previously about Rish Lakish, the greatest student of Rabbi Yochanan in Eretz Yisrael. Who wanted to serve the Kohanim in his time. A Kohen is not allowed to walk in a cemetery, and certainly cannot walk over the grave of one who's buried, because that is called tumah. That's a law, the Torah. The Kohen cannot become tummy to a dead person. There are many graves in Eretz Yisrael which were unmarked, and unknowingly a Kohen might pass over them, step over the grave, become tummy. So Rish Lakish dedicated himself, as did many rabbis before him, to seeking out the graves in Israel and to mark them off, the Kohanim to beware not to step over those graves. It wasn't just seeking out the grave, it was marking off the grave on top, up to where this grave reached. Now, he sought out the grave of Rabbi Chia. Rabbi Chia was closest friend of Rabbi Nachman, and one of the greatest rabbis of all time. When he came to his grave, suddenly he couldn't see it. It disappeared. It was as though it was the grave of Moshe Rabbeinu, which no one could find. And he felt that this was a sign that the grave was too holy for him to see. He felt very saddened by this, and he spoke up, these powers of these tzadik, and he spoke up to heaven. He raised his eyes to heaven and said, Hashem, didn't I study as much Torah as Rabbi Chia? Why is he considered so much greater than I am that I cannot even detect his grave? A voice came from heaven to answer him and said, true, you did study as much Torah as he did. In that respect, you are as great. But you did not spread the knowledge of Torah as much as him. It's not just the studying of Torah, it's the teaching of Torah, spreading it to the multitude. In this case, he was unique. The Gemara says, let's illustrate this case. Rabbi Chia was very close to Rabbi Hanina. These two were fast friends, and they would many times argue good-naturedly. And in this argument, Rabbi Hanina would say to Rabbi Chia, "You dare to argue with me about a certain law? Why, I'm greater than you. Because of me, Chas v'shalom, if the Torah will be forgotten from the Jews, I have enough knowledge to return the entire Torah to all the Jews. The Torah cannot be forgotten during my time." And Mechia replied, "You argue with me. I'm not worried about returning the Torah to the Jews. I will see to it that the Torah will never be forgotten to the Jews. Because I made up my mind to go about the land of Israel. And in the first place, I planted flax, let this grow. From this, the flax that grows, I formed nets, a net or trap with which to catch deer. I slaughter this deer. The meat I gave to the orphans to eat. That's a mitzvah in itself. From the hide of the deer, that's parchment, I write on this hide 5 chamashim, the 5 books of Moshe Rabbeinu. Then I go into a village or a city, and I teach 5 children, each one a separate chamash. And then I teach 6 children, each one a separate order of the Mishnah. There are Shisha Sidrei Mishnah, 6 portions that the Gemara is divided into, Mishnayos. I teach these 6, one each a portion of Mishnah. One child cannot absorb that much. I give each one just one. Then I tell these children, I'm leaving now for a while. While I'm gone, I want you each to teach what you know to the others. And when you complete it, go teach it to others. Spread it this way. This way it's a chain reaction that multiplies. I go into a different city and I do the same. And that's how I make sure that the Torah will never be forgotten for the Jews. And this is what the Gemara says. Rabbi Nachman said, how inestimably great are the deeds of Rabbi Chia. And one rabbi said to him, very politely, of course, "You mean even greater than you?" And Rabbi said, "Of course, greater than me." Rabbi was known for his modesty. And he said, "Greater than your father, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel?" And Rabbi said, "Chas v'shalom, not greater than my father." There's a reason why this exchange of words was said. Now the Gemara goes further to speak about the greatness of Rabbi Chia, his greatness after he passed away. The Gemara says Rabbi Zera said that he had a dream. In this dream, Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Hanina, appeared before him. Rabbi Yossi had passed away. So he came from Gan Eden, appeared to Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Zera said, I asked Rabbi Yossi, where are you located? Where is your seat in Gan Eden? What level, what position do you have there? And he said, I am next to Rabbi Yochanan, who was the chief rabbi of Eretz Yisrael. This is, of course, after he passed away. And he asked Rabbi Yochanan, who is he next to? In other words, who is above him? And he said, above Rabbi Yochanan is Rabbi Yanai. And who is Rabbi Yanai next to? He said, above Rabbi Yanai is Rabbi Hanina, a friend of Rabbi Chia. And who is above Rabbi Hanina? And he said, above him is Rabbi Chia. Rabbi Zera said, I asked him, isn't Rabbi Yochanan, the chief rabbi of Israel, next to Rabbi Chia? And Rabbi Yossi answered me, he said, of course not, impossible. Rabbi Chia holds a place where the fiery sparks, the flaming fire of heaven is so great that no one on a lower level can ever penetrate that. The Gemara illustrates this too. The Gemara says there was a certain rabbi who was very holy and who had Eliyahu HaNavi as his visitor very often. And one day, this rabbi was seen. In the morning, his eyes were normal. In the evening, his eyes looked as though they were burnt, very severely singed. They asked him what happened, And he said, I had asked Eliyahu Navi to show me the rabbis in heaven. I want to be able to see them. Eliyahu Navi answered, I'll show them to you. You deserve the right to see them. But I advise you that each one look at. When it comes to Rabbi Chia, don't dare to look. It's too holy a sight. Now, I saw them, and I asked him, how will I be able to tell which is Rabbi Chia? He said, each rabbi is given a special coach, like a throne that glides through the heavens. Each one is carried by angels. Rabbi Chia's throne, his coach, it travels without angels at all, meaning that the Shekhinah itself carries his throne through the heavens. When you see a coach without angels, don't dare to look. He said, I couldn't contain myself. I looked, and 2 sheets of fire came out, like arrows of fire, and burnt my eyes out. They completely blinded me. The next day I went to the cave Rabbi Chia is buried, and there I bent over his grave, I cried to Rabbi Chia, and I said to him, I use these eyes to study the Torah which you teach. Your words are the ones that I study. And when I speak your words, then it benefits you. Because the Gemara says when you mention a certain rabbi who has passed away, mention his name, then he comes to life in the grave. It is as though he lives in both worlds simultaneously. Therefore, I beg of you, I should not be punished because of the fact that I looked where I shouldn't have. Immediately he was cured. His eyesight was returned, but the perimeter around his eyes remained singed. And that's why they saw it looked as though his eyes were burnt at that time. Now the Gemara tells a still deeper story to illustrate the real greatness of Rabbi Chia. The Gemara says that Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Rebbe, used to have Eliyahu Navi come to him constantly. One day it was Rosh Chodesh, the first day of the month. Rebbe waited, and Eliyahu Navi did not come. Then, later when he came, Rebbe asked him, why did you keep me waiting? Why were you absent? Eliyahu Navi answered, I was very occupied in heaven. This was Rosh Chodesh. On earth we have a law that it is incumbent, it's compulsory for every Jew to visit his rabbi on Rosh Chodesh. The posek in the Torah. That same rule applies in heaven. It is incumbent upon every soul to pay his respects to his rabbi there, which means to Hashem, to the Shekhinah. That's why I had to prepare Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, the 3 fathers of the Jews, prepare them for this, to sort of dress them properly and see that they were well groomed, whatever manner that is in heaven. Now, I did it to Avraham Avinu. I washed his hands, prepared him for it. And then I went to Yitzchak Avinu. And then I had to travel to get to Yaakov Avinu and to prepare him separately. This travel between each one took up so much time, that's why I came late. The Rebbe asked Eliyahu Navi, why don't you do it to all 3 together, one time in one place? So he answered, the 3 of us cannot be together in Gan Eden because of the risk that if all 3 got together, literally together, and they would cry out, pray to Hashem for Mashiach to come, they have the power of bringing Mashiach immediately. In order to avoid that, they are kept separate in heaven. The Rebbe asked Eliyahu Navi, are there any 3 on earth now comparable to the power of these 3 fathers of the Jews? The Navi answered, yes, there are. Rabbi Chia and his 2 sons. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Cheskel, and his sons, Rabbi Chia. If these 3 got together, it would bring Mashiach in a moment. Rabbi thanked him for the information. When he left, Rabbi HaKadosh issued a decree as chief rabbi that this day shall be a day of fast, which means that all Jews must assemble around the main shul of Rebbe, and they had to say special prayers for the Tainus, with 3 chazunim, 3 cantors to officiate. time of fast, they allow 3 candles. Only these 3 he's appointing will be Rabbi Chia and his 2 sons. The fast was proclaimed, the prayers began. The main prayer, of course, is the Shemona Esrei, the Amidah. Rabbi Chia and his 2 sons started to say the Shemona Esrei. This was apparently the winter time, and they said the words Mashiv Haruach Hamar Dagashim. When they said Mashiv Haruach, which means the winds below, the powerful wind came up to show that the words were so effective. The moment they said something, it came true. The winds began to blow. Hamar Dagashim. They just said those words, and a heavy rain began to fall. Now they were getting close to the words that would bring Mashiach. The words Mechayeh HaMesim. Very close to this. When they got close to it, the entire world began to tremble because of this change. What was about to happen? In heaven, there was a storm too. In heaven, of course, there's no time. So all that transpired took just a second. The question arose in heaven, who dared to reveal this secret to the immortals on earth? The answer there was Eliyahu Navi. He was brought before the heavenly court. He was charged with revealing the secret, and he was sentenced to receive 60 lashes of fire. This was meted out to him, and then he was told, now undo the damage that you nearly brought about. So he came down, and as an angel, every angel has the power to transform himself into anything he wishes. Came down in the form of a bear, fiery bear, came charging into the shul, frightened the people so that they scattered, they could not get together before the words Mechayeh HaMesim were said, and so he stopped them from affecting the Geula at that moment. This is what the Gemara says, and of course this is what the Gemara ends with. Now the question obviously is, so what? If he did this, why could Rebbe have immediately reassembled them and told them, say the words regardless of who comes in? This angel cannot harm you because you are above the power of angels. He could have done this. Imagine how great the accomplishment would have been. He got in history as the person who brought Mashiach. The answer is that Rabbi Nachman himself realized this action from heaven was a message to him. It is true that he could have brought Mashiach right then. There's no question about that. But he saw that the will of heaven was Mashiach should not come. Not that he should not come then, but he should not come because of Rabbi Chia and his 2 sons. Because Mashiach will come only once. That'll be the one, first, last, final time forever. It will not be repetition. So that if we are going to celebrate the coming of Mashiach forever afterwards, it would be difficult for us to say, we celebrate this because of Rabbi Chia and his 2 sons who brought Mashiach. What happened to all the thousands of tzadikim who prayed so hard to Mashiach to come? What happened to all the millions of ordinary layman Jews who fast on Tisha B'Av, who give of their all in tefillah for Mashiach to come? They will not count at all. This is not what Hashem wants. Hashem wants every Jew to participate in this tefillah of Mashiach, that when Mashiach does come, each Jew will be able to say, I am the one that brought Mashiach. Every individual will say this, and each Jew will be telling the truth. Because every time a Jew prays for Mashiach to come, it brings him closer. It cuts a minute, an hour, a moment off the time of his coming. So each Jew's prayer counts towards the moment of his coming. Mashiach does come finally. The second he comes will be because of each Jew that prayed. No one will be excluded from that privilege of being able to say, I brought Mashiach at that second. If not for my prayer, he wouldn't have come then. This is the reason why Rabbi Nachman decided to wait and let Mashiach come at the designated time, with every single Jew given the privilege of praying for him, and every Jew enjoying the knowledge that he was instrumental in bringing him. And therefore, this message is for us, to pray very intently, to be zocher, that through our prayers we should be zocher to see the coming of Mashiach in our time, rebuilding of the Bet HaMikdash, the Geula Shlema, and the Heirat Yameinu, Amen, Amen. We continue the shiur in Gemara. Yesterday we performed a test, a shiur in Ashkenaz. It was a very successful test, so good that it doesn't even call for an encore. So today we revert back to Sephardic. The difference is all the same anyhow. The Gemara speaks about Shmuel, who was one of the two chief rabbis of Bavel. In fact, the Gemara says in Sanhedrin that when we mention the word Rabotenu Shebebavel, top rabbis of Bavel, refers to Rav and Shmuel. Shmuel is famous because he was a baki, an expert in astronomy, in the calendar. He knew the secrets of the solar system, the lunar cycle, and in general he was very wise and clever. One of his famous statements was, "I know the geography of heaven, the streets of heaven, as clearly as I know the streets of my own city." In addition, Shmuel was known as one of the greatest doctors of all time, medical doctor. Now this is an unusual statement, because we find in the Gemara mentioned many times that the Torah frowns upon doctors and medicine. Though the Torah itself says that permission was granted to doctors to attempt cures, this permission is granted. It's a permit. It's permitted for a person to visit a doctor too. But it is preferable in the eyes of Hashem. Atov be'einecha, what is good in the eyes of Hashem is a person who does not rely upon doctors, but rather turns to Hashem for assistance and for medical cure. In praying to Hashem, Hashem can inject the necessary ingredients of medicine and cure into simple bread and water. Especially Rabbi Arizal speaks at length against the medical profession and shows proof of how unreliable they are. In many cases where he himself attested to the fact that he had seen debates among different medical teams where one team would claim that the cure for a certain type of disease was only that which was extremely warm. Hot, heat would cure it, and cold could prove fatal. A different team of doctors maintained the exact opposite. They said that cold is the cure and heat is fatal, which means that one of these two doctors was a killer. One of these two teams' theories. Same in many other instances. Therefore, the result is, why turn to doctors when there is a questionable benefit that can be derived from them, when we have an alternative that is positive? We know that Hashem is the doctor. Hashem is the one that can effect cures in a positive manner. And that is why the true path that a Jew should take is to, since we are not that great tzadikim, and we can sit back at home if a person is very ill, dangerously ill, and say, well, let Hashem take care of it. At least we do go to doctors. Keep in mind the fact that the cure, the final cure, comes from Hashem. The doctor is only an agent and a messenger. And if a person is cured, he owes his thanks to Hashem and not to the doctor. Now, in the case of Shmuel, he was blessed with the knowledge, the exact knowledge of whichever types of herbs were necessary for certain medicines, because he took his knowledge from the Torah. The Gemara says that Shmuel was the doctor for Rabbi Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Yehuda Nasi. We discussed him in the recent past at great length about the different types of sicknesses that he suffered during his lifetime. The many years of Yisurim he accepted upon himself, especially teeth, sickness in the teeth, but he also had an eye disease that was extremely painful. And Shmuel offered to cure this eye disease. He said to Rebbe, Rebbe was Shmuel's rabbi, he said, allow me to place some medicine into the eye, beneath the eyelid. And Rebbe said, that's impossible. I cannot tolerate any weight whatsoever on the eye itself. I could never take that medicine, no matter how light it is. Shmuel said, in that case, I have a salve that I can put on top of the eyelid, and it won't touch the eye itself at all. Again, Rebbe said, it's impossible, because even the weight on the eyelid, too, is unbearable. So no matter what benefit I can get from this, I could not bear the pain of the weight on the eyelid. Shmuel said, Shmuel in his wisdom, knowledge of medicine, said, I can prepare a compound, a medicine, that I can place in a tube and place this underneath your pillow, the back of your head. The medicine is so powerful that it will penetrate through, go through the back of your head, and reach directly to the eyes themselves. They'll stop there, and they will cure the eyes. This he did, and Rebbe's eyes were cured. Rebbe was very much impressed by this. And of course, he was very appreciative. So, he tried very hard to repay Shmuel. Shmuel being the chief rabbi of Bavel, but there is no such thing as no real smicha in Bavel, no ordination, no degree of rabbi. The true degree of rabbi, the true smicha, can be received only in Eretz Yisrael. So Rebbe said, he decided, I can repay Shmuel by giving him smicha. He tried to find a moment, an opportune moment to give him smicha, and no matter how hard he tried, he could not find that moment. Always, they could not get together for that moment to have the smicha given. One time, Shmuel said to Rebbe, don't try, because there's a reason why it just doesn't come about. It is so destined from heaven that I will not receive smicha from you. I found a sefer written by Adam Harishon, by Adam himself. In this sefer it tells about future generations. The sefer says that Shmuel, that means himself, Shmuel shall be called Chacham. It means a Talmid Chacham, a very learned rabbi, but he will never be called Rabbi. He'll never get the degree of smicha. In addition, Adam Harishon wrote that Rebbe's cure will come through Shmuel. Now this is very interesting because we do not find reference made to this book of Adam Harishon elsewhere. But it's interesting to note that Adam Harishon did write a sefer in which he spoke about the future generations. The Gemara says that Hashem showed Adam Harishon all the future generations and all the leaders of those generations, but we don't find reference to the fact that he wrote a sefer on it. Here we see the Ferush. Actually, he did write a sefer, and in such minute detail, even speaking about a small instance about the cure of Rebbe's eyes. The Gemara says that the Gemara itself was divided into two parts. Mishnah, which was composed by the Tanaim, that's the first rabbis of the Gemara, and the Gemara composed by the Amoraim. The last of the Tanaim was the one who compiled the 6 parts of the Mishnah. The last 2 rabbis of the Tanaim were Rabbi and Rabbi Natan. They were the end of the Mishnah, and they set up the Mishnayot. The last 2 rabbis of the Gemara were Rav Ashi and Ravina. They are the ones who set up the order of the Gemarot. They took all the discussions of the rabbis and the Amoraim at that time. They arranged it in order each one according to the Mishnah that it discussed, and that's how today we have the Shas that we speak about. This Shas was compiled by these last two rabbis, Rav Ashi and Ravina. And that's why Tosafot says that whenever we see in the Gemara a word, someone says, I ask or I answer, without a name, this means naturally Rav Ashi and Ravina. Rav Ashi is the last one to speak on his own. Otherwise, he quoted the name of the person who made the statement. However, we must stress again and again that the basic root, the foundation of the emunah of the Jew is that every word in the Torah, both the written Torah and the oral Torah, which is the Mishnah and Gemara, was given by Hashem to Moshe Rabbeinu at Mount Sinai. So that all the words in the Gemara, though we quote a certain rabbi who makes a statement, though we quote two rabbis who conflict, who argue and debate, still those statements, both of them, are actual statements by Hashem to Moshe Rabbeinu at Mount Sinai. To go back still further, let's not say that that's when the Torah was first revealed. The fact is that the Avot, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, the Gemara says, obeyed all the laws of the Chachamim, of the Gemara, which means that they too knew Gemara. The Gemara says Avraham Avinu had Shas. In fact, he had more Shas than we have. We have 60 Gemarot, we have limited amounts. The Gemara Avodah Zarah, for example, which we have today, is a small Gemara comparatively. Avraham Avinu had that Gemara, and it had 400 chapters in it. But they go still further back, Adam Harishon, first person created, learned all of Shas, learned all of Kabbalah. In fact, he taught these Sefarim to the angels in heaven. So the Torah is not new. The Torah is older than the world itself. But the entire Torah was composed by Hashem, as the Gemara says, written by Hashem 2,000 years before creation. But the Yesod Emunah is that Torah is min Hashemayim. The Gemara says that any Jew who disputes this fact, who says that even one single detail in the Gemara is composed by man, no matter which man it is, even Moshe Rabbeinu, that person can have no part in Olam Haba. Because one who does not have this basic faith does not deserve to ever go to Gan Eden. That's why this is so beneficial a fact, because whenever we make a statement from the Gemara, we know that statement is 100% positive and true. Since the author of that statement is Hashem, and naturally Hashem is Emet, the words are the truth. If ever a person is in doubt about any fact whatsoever, or any discussion among lahavdil philosophers or scientists, and we find a statement in the Torah to contradict them, we know that those scientists are speaking falsely against the truth, which is the word of Hashem. So in the knowledge of truth, no one can surpass one who has knowledge of Torah. The Gemara says that Rabbi Bar Nachmani, who was also one of the great rabbis of the Gemara, he lived shortly after Shmuel. His death was caused because of the fear of the Romans. The Romans persecuted the Jews, and because of this harassment of the Romans, this shortened his life. The Gemara says, tells the details of this story. One time, the enemies of the Jews reported to the king that there's one Jew, one person among the Jews, who causes a loss of taxes to the Roman king. 12,000 Jews avoid paying taxes twice a year, once in the summer and once in the winter, meaning once before Pesach and once before Sukkot. Those are the two main times when the Jews got together to listen to a lecture of the laws of the holidays. When the Rabbi Nachman gave these lectures, and most of the Jews, learned ones, got together to listen to these lectures, they assembled in his yeshiva, and there were a total of 12,000 Jews who assembled there. And that was the time when the king sent out his tax collectors, who could not find these people at home, and therefore they lost the taxes. So they reported to the king that there's this one person responsible. The Rebbe was responsible for the loss of these taxes, therefore he should be arrested. The king sent a messenger, military aide, to arrest Rebbe. He tried to find him and he couldn't, because Rebbe had heard about this and he fled. He left his city, went to a different city, and this military man picked up the trail and followed. And so he went from city to city, just escaping by a hairbreadth, till one day he came to the city of Pumbedisa. There, this messenger of the king happened to come to the same inn where Rebbe was staying. At this inn, of course, there's a restaurant there. This messenger ordered food, and they placed in front of him a plate with 2 cups of wine. And as soon as he drank the 2 cups, they removed the tray. Now, the Gemara says that Zugot, in those days, today possibly, not as much as then, those days the Shedim, the evil spirits, were particular about a person drinking Zugot, that means couples, 2 cups of wine and no more, because the Shedim have power over the Zugot, couples. Any person who drinks 2 cups of wine becomes susceptible to the power of the Shedim who do harm to him. So as soon as this person drank 2 cups of wine and removed the tray, which means he wasn't going to drink any more, he was suddenly stricken very seriously, very serious illness. And the people in the inn were very frightened because they knew he was an important messenger of the king. They came to a Rebbe who was hiding there. They asked him, what should we do? The Rebbe said, it's obvious that this was caused by drinking Zugut. Bring to him a tray with 1 cup of wine, let him drink the cup, remove the tray, and he'll be cured, because this will remove the Zugut. They did this, the man was cured, and he said, I know that the person I am seeking is here. He must be around, because I can feel that this took a lot of knowledge in curing me so suddenly. Only Rebbe would have that knowledge. So he made a fast search in the inn, and he caught Rebbe. And he said to him, you have saved my life. And therefore, I'm willing to give my life for you. I'm going to go back, tell the king that I couldn't find you. Now, if he sentenced me to death, then I will not talk. I won't tell him about you, and I'll die. But if he sentences me to torture, that I cannot take. I'll have to tell him where you are. Meanwhile, I must lock you up and be sure that you don't escape. He locked him up, tightly sealed him in a room, and he left. Rebbe was fearful, and he prayed very hard, and the wall crashed in. He was able to walk out of that room. From there he fled further. He came to a swamp, and he sat down on a tree stump, very dejected. But despite his being dejected, he began to study Torah as diligently as ever before. He was in the middle of studying Torah. Meanwhile, coincidentally, something took place at that very moment in heaven. Even says that in heaven there are yeshivot, just like there are on earth. There are yeshivot conducted by angels, the study of Torah. There is a yeshiva conducted by Moshe Rabbeinu, one conducted by Mashiach, till the time that he comes to earth, and others conducted by the great rabbis of the past. There is also, in the Sifta Dedikia, a higher yeshiva, where there are lessons and discussions in Torah between Kaviyachol Hashem and the leading angels. At that moment there was a discussion in heaven about a certain Hebrew law. The law states that a person who has leprosy is considered tameh. He is impure, and he must be excommunicated, be kept away from other Jews. Now, what constitutes leprosy? It tells about 4 different types of diseases. Leprosy is a skin disease. 4 different types of the skin disease. All of them are cases where the skin turns white. Instead of the flesh color, it turns to a whiteness. The worst type is the disease called beheaded, where the skin turns as white as snow. There are 4 degrees of whiteness. The whiter the leprosy, the more severe it is. There is one that is like lamb's wool, the whiteness of lamb's wool. There is one that is like the white of an egg. There is one that is white as plaster. And the whitest, strongest is white as snow, which is the sharpest whiteness that exists. If a person finds that on his arm, for example, there is this rash, a white rash, this beheaded, he is not yet tameh. The Kohen is supposed to lock him up for a week, and then to see if there are white hairs that grow in the middle of this rash, then he is tameh. If the rash comes first, the beheaded comes first, and then white hairs are formed, grow in it, he is 100% tameh. But if the person had white hairs there first, and then the rash grew around it, he is not tameh, he is 100% tahor, pure. So we know then that if the beheaded precedes the white hair, tameh. If the white hair precedes the beheaded, he is tahor. Now the Gemara says in heaven, in the yeshiva in heaven, there arose a discussion about the question, what if a person has this rash and 2 white hairs in it, and there is a safek, a doubt, which one came first? Did the hairs come first and he is pure, or did the beheaded come first and he is tameh? This was a discussion in heaven at that very moment. There was a debate in heaven, and there were 2 sides to this debate. Hashem said the law in that case is that the person is tahor, he is pure. And all the angels in heaven, the entire yeshiva, argued this point, and they maintained that the person is tameh, impure. This did not constitute disrespect to Hashem, chas v'shalom. The same token, if you have a class, a rabbi teaching students, no matter how much inferior they might be in knowledge, they have a right to express their opinion and to argue the point. This does not mean disrespect. A good student is one who asks questions. He wants to understand. And it's up to the rabbi to explain, to clarify. At times, the Gemara says that a student can enlighten the rabbi with his questions. The case here, there was a simple discussion, a debate on this point. The Torah is open to debate. And in this debate, strangely was between Hashem and the angels. Hashem said the law is in case of safek, doubt, he is pure, tahor. The angels said he is tameh. Now, in heaven the question arose, how will we prove who's right? And they said what's the question proving who's right? Is there any question of doubt there who's right? The answer is that the Torah was no longer the power influence of heaven. Hashem had granted the Torah to be sent down to earth in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, and from that time on, all laws, rabbinic laws, were to be decided by the rabbis only. As, for example, the Gemara states very clearly that to decide, to determine something as important as a holiday, for example, fasting on Yom Kippur, depends upon the Sanhedrin, the rabbis on earth. Rosh Hashanah, 10 days before, when is Rosh Hashanah? The Gemara says that in heaven, the angels ask Hashem. On Rosh Hashanah, you sit on the throne of judgment. Now, when it comes close to Rosh Hashanah, they ask Hashem, when are you going to sit on this throne of judgment? And Hashem says, don't ask me. We must wait until the rabbis decide whether the new moon has appeared legally or not. It's their decision. If they say the new moon has appeared, then that's Rosh Chodesh, the first day of the month, which is Rosh Hashanah. So we see that in heaven, they too wait for the decision of the rabbis on earth. And here too, the question arose, who will prove who's right? We cannot decide it in heaven because the privilege of determining a law was given to the rabbis on earth. Let us inquire on earth. Who is authorized to answer this question? And they said there is one rabbi on earth who is an extreme expert in the laws of leprosy, and that is Rabbi Nachman. We must summon him to the heavenly yeshiva and let him decide. Summon him means he has to pass away. So they sent the angel of death down to bring Rabbi Nachman. The angel came before him to draw his soul from him, and the angel of death was powerless, because as long as Rabbi Nachman studied Torah, as long as he kept saying words of Torah, he was completely immune to the angel of death, the same as the story of King David. So the angel of death waited till he saw he could wait no longer, so he made a sound that resembled the sound of soldiers in the nearby bushes. Rabbi Nachman heard that, and he said, I'm tired of fleeing these Romans. I'm willing to depart from this world. I can't take this harassment anymore. At that moment, the angel of death took his soul, and in that second, just before his soul departed, the question was placed before him, and he said, his answer was, Tahor, Tahor. Twice he said, pure, pure. The law in this case, if there's a doubt, it is pure. Meaning that he coincided with the statement of Hashem. A voice came from heaven and said, Ashrecha Rabbi Nachman. Fortunate and blessed are you, Rabbi Nachman, that you are pure and your soul left you with the word Tahor. Because you have also agreed to the words parallel that of Hashem himself. Immediately afterwards, a note fell from heaven that reached the rabbis on earth. The note said, Rabbi Nachman has been invited to the yeshiva of heaven, which means he has left the earth. His soul has left the earth, and it means that the people on earth are now held responsible for his burial with honors due to a great tzadik. The Gemara says that Abaye and all the rabbis, Abaye was his closest student. In fact, Abaye was adopted by Rabbi Nachman. He went out with all the rabbis to seek where Rabbi's body was, and they couldn't find it. They went to the swamp, and they saw a group of birds, an entire flock of birds, not flying in the air, but just hovering, stationary in the air, forming a shadow. And they said, this must be the place where his body is. They're forming a shadow over it. It shouldn't be hurt by the sun. They came, they found his body. They delivered the proper hesped, the eulogies. He was buried with honor. They declared 3 days and 3 nights of mourning. In the 3 days and 3 nights, again a note fell from heaven and said, anyone who stops mourning now shall be in chidem, a heavily curse upon that person. So they prolonged the period of mourning to 7 days. The third note fell from heaven and said, you may now go to your homes in peace. The day of Rabbi Nachman's passing, there was a businessman riding on a camel, and suddenly a storm came up, a powerful wind that lifted him off the ground with the camel from one side of the river across to the other side, threw him upon the other side. He was shocked. This was an unusual type of storm. And he asked, what happened? They told him Rabbi Nachman had passed away. So he turned his face up to heaven and he said, Hashem, the whole world is yours. Everything belongs to you. Rabbi Nachman also belongs to you. He was very loyal to you, very devoted, and you show a devotion to him too. Why should that cause you to destroy your world? If this storm keeps up, the world will be destroyed. With these words of prayer, the storm subsided. Now to return for a moment to this point, we happen to have discussed this very recently, but it pays to speak about this once more for the sake of the record, let's say. The question is, we have a debate in heaven between Hashem and the angels in heaven. Fine. As we said, it is proper that even lower type, a lower mentality, one of a lower level can discuss something with one who is much higher if that one possesses modesty, humbleness. And of course, the Torah says that Hashem displays the greatest degree of humbleness more than any person existing. It was from Hashem that Moshe Rabbeinu learned his degree of modesty. However, we cannot deny that the word of Hashem is emet, truth, always, and that Hashem's wisdom is infinite, and that the Torah itself is the word of Hashem. So if there is a debate between Hashem and the angels, we could understand that a little. We could grasp that. The question is, though, what was the result of that debate? In a debate, one is always proven right, the second to the contrary. In the case of this debate, they said, let us find proof as to who is right. They called upon Rabbi Nachman to decide this point, and he said tahor, very nicely coinciding with the decision of Hashem. However, it does not end there, because if we want to decide a law, we turn to the Code of Hebrew Law, which is the Shulchan Aruch, written by the Rishonim, one of which is the Rambam. The Rambam states, the case of Baheret and Se'elavan, case of leprosy with white hair, where there is a doubt as to which one came first, the exact question that was discussed in heaven, Rambam says the final word, the final law is that that person is tameh, impure. That's the way the law remains today. That's the paradox. How is it possible that the law should be the opposite of what Hashem said? Enough that there was a debate about it, but that it should turn out that the others, Kaviyachol, are right. Hashem's decision, tahor, is not the final one. The decision of Shulchan Aruch is against Hashem. How can that be possible? The answer is that Hashem teaches us a lesson, as we see in other cases too. The Gemara says when Hashem said, let us, na'aseh Adam, let us create man, or the time of the generation who built the Tower of Bava, Hashem said, let us go down and let us confuse their languages. They could not converse with each other. Even it says, let us go down, let us create. Hashem echad, Hashem is one. Hashem needs no permission or no counsel of anyone. The answer the Gemara says is, Hashem simply displays his modesty and humbleness by speaking to the heavenly court and saying to them, even a king should always resort to advice, discussion with his council of ministers. So in modesty, Hashem says, let us decide this point together. Let us carry out the following instructions, or whatever decision is correct. Now, this is one case of the modesty of Hashem. Second case is where Hashem says a law is stated, and I will accept a decision that is contrary to mine. Why? Because I have a very important lesson to impart to all future generations, to future great rabbis who might be misled into thinking that they are infallible, they are perfect. So here Hashem said, this law is, I say tahor, and the final law is tameh, which means I, Hashem says, have been defeated. I've lost out. I've been defeated. But the important lesson is, Hashem says, that when I am defeated, I am really the winner. When I win, I am the loser. For example, to defeat means to overpower, to conquer. When the generation of the flood were evil, the world was corrupt, Hashem showed his great powers, the Gemurah. He came down and destroyed the world. Hashem said, I won, right? But I lost. I had a whole world created. I lost an entire world. I was left with just a handful of people. All of my creation went down the drain. All human beings, all animals, all birds were wiped out. Would you consider this really winning or victory? I lost out. But there's another case, Hashem says, where I lost the battle. When the people, the desert, built the golden calf, a major crime was committed. And I said to Moshe Rabbeinu, I'm going to wipe out the entire nation. I have decided, it is my decision, that I'll wipe out every one of the Jews, to the last person, just leave you alone. This is my decision. Moshe Rabbeinu argued against Hashem's decision. He prayed, he pleaded, he insisted, and he threatened. And finally, he won. He won over, and having Hashem say, I consent, I agree to forgive the Jews for this sin. Salachti kidvarecha, I have forgiven as you say, not as I said. So Hashem says, there I lost, right? But I did not lose, because I gained the whole nation. In losing this battle with Moshe Rabbeinu, I gained an entire nation. So this loss was really a victory. And here too Hashem says, in this case I illustrate a case in point where it seems that the other side has won this argument. Hashem says to all future rabbis, if you ever get into a debate and you find that you're in the same position as I was, where you state a law and you lose, know that you have really won. If you win, then you have not really won. Let's take a case, an example. The rabbi discusses a point where his knowledge seems to be supreme. He argues a certain law with his disciples or his colleagues. He insists on his being right, and after a long deliberation, he finds they discover that he was right. What is the result? He is just as right now as he was before. He remains with the same contention, the same idea, and the same knowledge that he had previously. There was nothing actually won as far as he's concerned. But should the rabbi lose this argument, should he be proven wrong, he has lost. But actually he has gained. Because now in losing, he has gained information which he did not have before. He now knows more than he had known previously. So the loss then, in truth, is a gain. And this is what the lesson that Hashem imparts here. Why the Rambam says that the law remains not like Hashem, not because Hashem didn't have the right answer. Hashem said this to teach this all-important lesson of the future. A lesson of modesty, a lesson in humbleness, a lesson in the true word, the true meaning of the word victory. And that's why the Gemara says too, when we say in Tehillim, Lam Natseach, Mizmor David, Lam Natseach. What does that mean? The Gemara says, sing a praise to Hashem. Menatseach means to one who defeats Hashem. If ever you defeat a person, the Gemara says the person you defeated is sad. In the case of Hashem, when you defeat Kaviyachol, you defeat Hashem, he is happy. Defeat means that you are guilty of sin. You pray very deeply, hitbodadut. You pour out your heart to Hashem, and you overcome. Defeat means you change the decision in heaven. No longer is there a punishment about to be meted out to you. Because you have won out a pardon, you have Kaviyachol defeated Hashem. Hashem is very happy about that. This is the true power of tefillah. And that's, too, is the greatness of Hashem, where this defeat is really victory. Victory for both sides, because you have won a pardon. Hashem has won that which he wants. He wants a Hashem to return to him and to become pure. Yemina says Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta was one of the great rabbis of the Gemara, but he was one of the very heavy ones. A great deal of weight. There were a number of rabbis who were extremely heavy in weight. We discussed a few of them before. He too was very heavy. We will not use the word overweight, chas v'shalom, because these were so pure and holy. The Torah says that their body was as pure as the neshama. They had purified themselves so. But he was an extreme heavyweight, and one day it was very hot. The sun was baking, and he sat on top of a hill, sort of a small mountain, and as he rested there, he said to his daughter, "Please take a fan and fan me so I can get some fresh, cool air. The sun is so merciless. If you do that for me, I'll reward you with a bushel of spices." She was about to do it. Suddenly, a fresh wind came up that dispelled all the hot air, and of course was much more powerful and much more effective than a simple fan. Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta said, "I promised my daughter a bushel of spices for just fanning me alone. How many," he said to this wind that came up, "how many bushels of spices do I owe your master for fanning me with this wind?" The greatness of Hashem, who could remove the heat far better, more powerfully than the best air conditioning available. This is the power of Hashem, who is Mishane Itin, Machlif et Azmanim, the master of weather, the master of the elements, the power over what scientists call nature. There is no such thing as nature, natural elements. Everything is directed by Hashem himself. And that's why the Torah says very often that the Hebrew word for nature is hateva for nature. The word hateva is begematria Elokim. Hashem himself rules the nature. There is no such thing as nature of its own. In fact, Baal Shem Tov says that every movement of what's so-called nature, the slightest wind or the slightest rays of sun or anything, is because Hashem wills it at that time. This too is the basis of Emunah, and it is only through this Emunah that a Jew remains pure, can be